Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This is going to be my next The Legacy of Yangchen chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 2, which is called Adoration. So just before we jump in, I will just mention that I do have YouTube channel membership enabled on my channel. If you do want to help support the channel, help support this long 37 long video series here, the chapter analysis video series. So if you click the join button, or there's a link in the description, you'll get the choice for 2 different options if you want to help support the channel. Again, there's like loyalty badges, custom emojis available here, and then at the higher tier there are also exclusive videos available, but that is just if you do want to help support the channel. Otherwise we will jump into the chapter. So we opened up with a Chai-Si focused chapter. This is the first Yangchen focused chapter, so this is more of kind of getting into the kind of status quo in a way of the book. This is very much in line with sort of where the previous book ended, in that Yangchen is effectively the acting leader of Bin acting Zongdu, you could say, because of course there hasn't really been the next meeting to discuss this sort of stuff, because effectively that is something we are building up to in this book, with the big meeting in Taku, one of the other Shang cities, where they'll kind of discuss stuff along those lines. But for now, because of the incident at the end of the first book, and the fact that officially it's on the docket as spiritual matters, effectively, as what happened, Yangchen is the ideal leader here in Bin for now. We know from the end of the book, last book, that she is hugely respected in Bin from what she did just in the kind of couple of days, weeks following that. And now, basically half a year later, we see that it's just gone from strength to strength, and she actually has been able to kind of make some big changes here. But as ever, it is sort of at the cost of the stress that she is put under, because she has to keep up all these kind of lies and acts with specific people, and it's just a huge energy drain to be as active as she needs to be in this city. And this is just one city. She wants to try and change things like across the board, and it's like, how will she ever have the energy to actually do this? And especially as we open up the chapter here, because she's having these kind of dreams, these nightmares basically about Jetson. And this is where we jump into the book with that plot point of, what is Yangchen going to do about Jetson? Now, in very short order, we will get into more directly Yangchen attempting to deal with this. But for now, they do some setup here with the idea of, we open up this chapter in Yangchen's dream of like Yangchen basically being teased by Jetson. They're playing airball together. Jetson seems to be in full control. Yangchen is trying to get back into the game here, that she's not getting a go of the ball here because Jetson is so in control. Then as the game progresses, Yangchen finally does manage to get the ball, but her dream then shifts, and all of a sudden, instead of her holding the air ball, she's basically holding onto a light that kind of represents Jetson's spirit. And it suddenly, this is where it changes from being a dream to a nightmare, because she's suddenly looking at Jetson, and Jetson is still not moving, her eyes are blank, and she basically looks dead. And this is obviously meant to be this representation of how Jetson looked as her body died, which we know Yangchen did witness. We were told that in the first book. And of course, what we're getting here is a sense of Yangchen's guilt over what happened here. She blames herself completely for what happened to Jetson. And that's what they're kind of getting across here. This game of like keep away in airball. But now all of a sudden it's like, no, this spirit, like take it back. Yangchen literally feels that like, I took your spirit from your body. That is how I basically killed you. And she wants to put the spirit back into Jetson to bring her back. But of course, you can't reverse time. That's literally said here. No healing reversed. Time, you can't undo what happened to Jetson. And she's, desperate in this dream, of course. They do also allude once again to the a corpse shroud of fog. So again, the fog of lost souls being referenced here, as we begin to kind of get some of the more of the details on this. Though, admittedly, I think a lot of this stuff was presented in the previous book, but it's nice to get a reintroduction to it in this book here. So at this point, she wakes up. It's she's obviously in Bin here, and she reflects on this dream here. And that is the kind of point here, is that she has this dream. She does blame herself. She takes responsibility for Jetson's death. But she also recognizes the interesting visuals of what she saw in her dream, which is that her and Jetson looked effectively the same age in the dream. Kind of highlighting in a way how long ago what happened to Jetson was, in a way, I suppose, how young Jetson was at the time, because we were never really told how old she was. This maybe gives us a little bit more of a sense that she might have just been late teens, kind of early 20s, and so a 17-year-old Yangchen looks around the same age as Jetson did. And Yangchen is like, I'm catching up to your age at this point. So that's the kind of point here. This is Yangchen's ultimate greatest failure that she views, is what happened to Jetson, this extremely important person in her life. So at this point we establish, okay, what is she actually doing in Bin at this point? So she has to have a meeting with some of the other Shang merchants, but also this time out there's going to be an inspector from the Earth King there. So this is kind of like all hands needed for this one. We need to keep the act up 100% here, because there is literally a Ba Sing Se inspector here who's going to report back to the Earth King. And so they've known this is coming. It's established as we go through the chapter that there's been a bit of a kind of plan put in place. So the whole thing is a little bit of a charade. It's a bit of a just lesson in acting. But Yangchen, of course, is going to go off script a little bit here to put some pressure on the Shangs. That, even though they're working together at this point, she still isn't going to let it go like how they were before. And that's the kind of interesting stuff here as we kind of jump into, I suppose, who the key characters kind of supporting her here in Bin are. Because, of course, in the first book, it was Zhongdu Honshe. But, of course, we know he's being held prisoner in the Northern Air Temple. So, of course, he's not here. So that means the other two more notable Shang merchants from the first book are now Yangchen's second in commands. And so this is where we get the reintroduction of Shang Teyin and also Shang Nohei. So these we saw in, I think it was chapter 10 of the first book, which was when we had the big meeting. And effectively, Teyin was known as the guy who effectively started the initial riots in Bin by not paying people for work that he then, the project he then cancelled. And then Noahai was the one who insulted Yangchen, being like, we're talking about business here, not spiritual matters, what do you know, basically. But now we see that they're actually on the same terms here, kind of working together. There's absolutely a sense that these two characters have evolved to realize the kind of importance of this, and that they are changing the city by following Yangchen's kind of roles, but also that they are kind of forced to work together. So they both, each side, Yangchen and then the other Shang merchants, don't super enjoy the situation that they're in, but they know they have to work together. Otherwise, the wrath of the Earth King will kind of fall upon them. So I think there's some nice nuance here, where I think you can tell she has managed to actually get quite a few of the Shang merchants on board, where they're actually this isn't so bad, doing things the right way, the good way, where we're actually making a change. So that's the kind of whole kind of point here. So they start the meeting, and of course we address immediately the fact that there is an inspector here. This is Inspector Gu, that is just G-U. Again, I want to see what the audiobook pronunciation exactly is on that, but that is the character here. So he's going to report back everything at this important meeting to the Earth King. So at this point, we basically just get to the idea of okay, what do we need? What are the problems facing Bin at this point? Yangchen has already made huge progress, so it's not like things are in crisis. But it is noted here that things have sort of evolved enough to where Bin-Er is flourishing quite a bit, and so the population is rising. It's becoming known as a little bit of a kind of destination where like fair business is done here. There's not a lot of tricks happening here anymore, so there's growth in that sense, but they don't necessarily have the infrastructure to support this level of growth. And so the problem here is now sort of are there enough supplies, basically, essentials for everyone? And so water comes up, and Yangchen notes that the city needs at least 4 new wells to support the extra population. Otherwise, people will get sick. But there's a nice little note here in the way she has to word it, because it's like, it's not enough to just be concerned about the people and that the people need this. It's, we need wells because people being sick will ultimately lead to a loss in revenue. The people who ultimately, work to generate the money won't be able to do that, and so money will be lost, and that's to justify the idea of why they need the wells. That's the way Yangchen feels she has to act, how it will ultimately be reported to the Earth King, and she doesn't like that she has to do this, but she is forced to do it. So this is where the Shang merchants speak up, and they're like, we understand, like, that is correct, but it would be stretching the limits of what we are capable of from a financial point of view too far. We can't really justify doing it here, basically. There are quite a few problems with us getting a lot of funds because some of the bad mistakes made by Zhongdu Hunshe, and he's obviously not around anymore, and we're now dealing with the after effects of that, in that he owes a lot of money to all of the other Shang cities, and we just can't afford this project while also paying off debts to all these other places. Now, this comes back later on. Like, this kind of will be resolved later on in the book. It's not a huge important plot point, because obviously more of a kind of action intrigue kind of plot kicks off in this book, of course. But we do come back around to addressing this whole, like, the city needs money situation. So the rest of the ploy basically is going to kind of plan out here. So Yangchen initiates it, and it's just like, Shang Teyin, give me your hat. And then she goes to Nohai, give me your earrings, basically. So effectively what she's doing is she's taking these expensive items that these businessmen have and is getting them with the idea that they're going to have to basically sell some of their luxury goods effectively to generate money for the city. This is what they need to do. That's kind of how desperate things are, and this will also show the inspector, and thus the Earth King, the lengths that they're going through to make sure the city prospers, that they are putting the deal with him ahead of their own kind of success, basically. That's the whole point of this act and what's going on here. And so she has them put all their stuff into this kind of bowl. She kind of gestures it around as if she's kind of like begging, and the Shangs are kind of like laugh a little bit, but it seems like they're on board. She's prepared them ahead of time that, like, okay, we're all preparing for it's going to be this kind of mass kind of gift giving thing where they'll give up a lot of their expensive items and it'll all work out. But there has to be a little bit more to it than this, because it almost comes across a little bit weird if it literally just they decide to sell their stuff out of nowhere. So Yangchen reaches over, grabs her staff, and is just like, I will sell my glider staff as well. And it's kind of like, in fact, actually, I will do this. You can take your things back. This should be kind of almost like enough on its own. Perhaps she kind of acts like she doesn't know the true value of like an avatar's glider staff, an avatar relic, basically. But what happens here is that the ploy kind of continues, and so Teyin and Noahai stand up and are like, no, the problem here is actually that you will need more than just like my hat, just my earrings. you'll need more than that to generate the money needed for these wells. And it's this kind of more, rather than Yangchen forcing their hands, they actually choose to kind of give up more. And the aspect of the staff coming into play adds to it so that it feels a little bit more kind of believable what's actually happening here. So yeah, she is going to part with her staff here. This is something that is actually going to happen. It's all part of the plan here. And she watches as, like, everyone kind of notes, like, everyone thinks it's this incredible thing happening. Yangchen inspiring this amazing act from the high-ups in the city to generate money for the people. As she even notes, like, a servant off in the distance kind of watching this, like, with like a shine in her eyes as she's like witnessing Yangchen be inspirational. But Yangchen, of course, knows that, like, it's purely kind of, in a way, manipulation. That this is the way to get what she actually needs done, just requires this to be done to make it look better. And if she makes herself feel, if she feels sick, that this is what she has to do, is the idea here. So then we have a cut in the chapter. So she speaks then personally to Inspector Gu, and he immediately is kind of like, yeah, like, I assume whoever buys the staff will then immediately gift it back to you, because it would, like, earn them so much, like, spiritual merit that they reunited the avatar with their one of their items with their staff. But Yangchen truly does want to, give it away, and that, like, she doesn't want the loophole, out of the situation. It would mean more for her to be seen, like, without it for a while, basically. And again, we address something that's been a little bit of a theme of Yangchen. Gu is just like, won't it be inconvenient for you without your glider? And Yangchen's like, the purpose of life isn't convenience. And she knows that she's had to say that to quite a few people over her life. But anyway, they get down to kind of like discussing things kind of a little bit more. But it is noted that a crowd is kind of beginning to gather outside, and Yangchen has felt that, it was kind of hidden a little bit where exactly she is, if she in the city at this point. But no, there's a huge gathering outside the Bin-Er gathering hall, and they are screaming for their avatar. So it's this kind of crazy incident, and Gu kind of notes that, like, the people, they adore you. But Yangchen's just like, it's only a show of respect. And I think this is a fascinating point from Gu. He's just like, no. I'm old enough to remember Avatar Zito, and he was given plenty of respect. This is something else. Devotion, perhaps. Belief in Avatar Yangchen, who can cure all ills. And she says, unwarranted. And he's like, maybe not as much as you think. You've quelled spiritual unrest over the skies, improved things for the common folk, increased business by 1/3. I don't know how you can sustain so many victories. And in her head, she can't say this out loud. And this is a key point here, again, referencing the dynamic from the first book and what we're going to explore throughout this book as well. I can't, Inspector, she wanted to say. My secret is that I can't. That she is struggling under the strain of what is happening here. This is, in a way, part of what is making these nightmares happen and bringing up all this stuff. It's the exhaustion beginning to come back into play, because things are never simple. She is forced to always have to, in a way, bring out that kind of spy master manipulation side of things to do things, because nothing can ever just be simple or like the easy way. And that's what is noted here. It's just like a lot of these successes are based off of lies. And she even notes that, like, okay, the city growing is like a good thing, but they can't manage the growth, and that's like a bit of a problem. Like, a lot of the kind of financial relative success of the place comes from the fact that they're lying to the Earth King about, like, the whole Platinum Affair agreement, and that they're still allowing all that, like, extra trade through that they were initially, which in the first book was, of course, the thing that Yangchen turned around on like Hansha when she mentioned it, that like I counted more ships than you were meant to allow in. She's continuing that, and that's kind of the kind of whole idea here. And she goes out, she's like interacting with the people, hoping to just kind of make her way through, but she knows like she kind of has to give them their moment with the Avatar. And like it says here in the final line, Yangchen did her best to put on a smile and pretend she wasn't trapped. And it's not that she has an issue with the people, it's just trapped in this situation where she is basically getting praise for effectively stuff that she doesn't feel kind of really worthy of, because of what she's kind of had to do to achieve the success in Bin-Er. And that is the very, I think, very interesting dynamic here of how she actually is going about maintaining this success here, and just the hoops that she has to jump through to kind of keep things going here, like coming up with this whole idea and having all the Shang merchants like act like they're hugely invested in Yangchen's plan, just so a good report basically goes back to the Earth King, so they have more time to actually figure out how to make things happen. It's the idea in a way that if there was no crazy incident that happened, eventually something is going to break here. That she has had initial successes, but it's kind of unsustainable ultimately. So, you know, something needed to change, and in a way the events happening in this book allow for some major shifts, and that's kind of just interesting to think about overall. So, you know, it's one of those chapters where, like, it's not the most kind of crazy bombastic chapter, but if you like the nuance of these situations as a little bit of a kind of late epilogue in a way to the first book, this is pretty good, because like we're not really focused much on Bin-Er in this book, so it's nice to at least reference the fact that a place that was a huge focus in the first book, we are addressing where, like, what's going on with it a bit. Now, you do maybe question a little bit from a broader kind of point of view, you know, what happens to Bin-Er as we go from generation to generation? Like, obviously we seem to know that the Shang cities eventually, like, just fall away. They're not needed anymore. Do they get renamed? So they are actually places that exist, but we would mainly know them under a different name. Now, Taku is of course one of them, and we know that to be the same name it has going forward, but also that is effectively it's the ruins of Taku, so it isn't a place that thrives anymore. But the other ones, Port Tugak, Jondari, and Bin-Er, are they actually still around after, in a way, everything that Yangchen has done here? I think there's definitely room for some of this stuff to make it work, so that is kind of interesting how that all kind of plays out. But yeah, that is the discussion on Chapter 2. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this one, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.